Hello and welcome back to Planetos Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to discuss all things Myrcella Baratheon. Pretty exciting, minor character. Really interested to discuss her tonight, and we'll get some perspective on why we chose her. I'm one of your hosts, Travis. You can find me on Twitter at Sir_Travis.
I'm another one of your hosts, Brett. You can find me on Twitter at HomelyPillow.
And I'm another one of your hosts, Micah, and you can find me on Twitter at Micah_of Clark.
So in our last episode, we talked about Alice Karstark, who was chosen by Micah. And the episode before that, we talked a little bit about Lysono Mar, who I chose. So, Brett, you chose Myrcella Baratheon. Why did you choose her?
In the first Jon chapter in Game of Thrones, he decides that she's insipid. And I think a lot of the fandom may have gone with that. Maybe not, but she seems very overlooked. And I like how she defends Tommen when Joffrey picks on him with I don't have the quote in front of me, but I know it's in the Google Doc, so we'll go, that'll be mentioned later. But also, she's really good at Savas, so, she's obviously very clever. And something I sort of noticed, there may be something there, but of the three Lannister bastards, I guess, whatever they are, whatever you decide they are, Myrcella seems like she's got a lot of like similarities to Tyrion. She's witty, but like it's sort of like the best of Tyrion. And then with Tommen, he's when he's jousting against the straw man and he gets knocked off, Sandor. What does he say about him? He's brave, or I can't remember the exact thing he says, but that just reminds me of Jaime, like a better version of Jaime. And then of course, Joffrey being the exception is probably the worst of like Cersei's traits, in a way. And of course Robert's, but they just seem to share similarities to the three Lannister, siblings. So.
Yeah, I think she's a really interesting character, and she's definitely interesting in, as the middle child of Jaime and Cersei's children. Like you said, Joffrey has this really terrible personality and does terrible things. It's just, a really horrible little shit.
Yeah.
And then Tommen is just this very, he's physically like fat. He's soft, he's doughy, he's he's pleasant. Don't get me wrong, but he's just a small little child. One of my favorite things about Tommen in the books is what is it? He likes to press the wax.
Yeah.
Like he loves it. And so, he's just kind of this innocent little thing. But you're right. She has these really dynamic qualities that make her much more interesting than I had really remembered. And, I think we can kind of see why she's put in the position she's in. She's put in the position she's in because she's female. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight, but I think this is gonna be an interesting discussion. I definitely would never think of picking Myrcella Baratheon, but I'm kind of glad that you did, because I think she bears a looking at.
Well, and it's just funny because you get Jon's first impression of her, that she's insipid, and there's nothing under the surface, but then the first thing you hear, is it the end of the first book or the beginning of the second, when Tyrion arrives in King's Landing? I think it's the beginning of the second. Yeah. And she's just so like she just like Joffrey's saying, y'all are acting like children. She's like, we are children, like
Yeah.
it's just fun. It's just funny. And then that, from there, I just kind of paid a little attention to her because there's just, there's not much. She's not in the books much, but every time that she's just always doing something sort of interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Micah, why don't you talk just a little bit about, what you think about this character, and then we'll dive right into some background on her and talk a little bit about her plot in the books, and then we'll talk a little bit about, where she's headed in the Winds of Winter and potentially A Dream of Spring.
Well, to start, I believe that she is innocent and deserves happiness with Trystane far, far away from the dangers of Westeros.
Yes.
Can't argue with that.
Besides that, I haven't put a lot of I haven't really put a lot of thought into Myrcella as a character, whereas I do enjoy her, and she's got a lot of cool little dynamic features that George gives her in her personality and whatnot. But in terms of minor characters, there are a lot more that caught my attention than Myrcella, I'll admit.
Sure. And I think that's fair. But one of the interesting things to me in some of the research we've done for this episode is there's some really interesting facts that surround her, and
definitely.
she's definitely and as I guess we shouldn't say she's prominent, but she's been in the story since the beginning. I mean, she goes to Winterfell with Robert and Cersei. She's right there from the beginning, and so she kind of looms in the background, and then really becomes really important to the plot. Maybe more the Dornish plot in Feast and Dance.
It's sort of how you get like Stannis in the first book, like how he's just mentioned over and over and over again, but he's, it seems like he should be a main character, but he's not. And that's sort of how Myrcella is, and really Tommen too.
Yeah.
So
I feel like with Myrcella, she was probably initially sort of a seed that Robert or George put in, fact, as well as Cersei and Jaime have all these have a few children, so here's one of them, and then probably during him creating the Fagon Dorn plot, he probably wanted to use Myrcella for that later, and then better off in clash, so that she would come and I'd imagine something like that happened.
Yeah, and I think that there's a definite reason that she's integral to the Dorne plot to a point, and we'll talk a bit about that here tonight. So let's jump right into some background on her. I'm going to talk a little bit here about her in the books, some of her traits, and then we'll jump into the Queenmaker plot, which is a really interesting thing that happens in A Feast for Crows and into A Dance with Dragons. So Myrcella really is the picture of your typical Lannister traits. She has golden hair, full lips, and emerald green eyes, and that's really how Cersei is described. So you kind of can think of her as kind of a carbon copy of Cersei, but it's really important to note that she has all of Cersei's beauty, as Tyrion says, but none of his sister's nature, and that's really important. She's delicate, she's courteous for her age, which is around 9 years old at the beginning of A Game of Thrones. She is strong-willed, she's courageous, she's very intelligent. She bears a striking resemblance to her distant cousin, Rosamund Lannister, of Lannisport. More on that later. There's kind of an interesting theory out there. It's pretty tinfoil, but we're going to talk about it here tonight. Now, before a Game of Thrones gets started, Myrcella accompanies her mother and the royal court to Casterly Rock for the tournament in honor of Prince Joffrey's name day. In A Game of Thrones, like we said before, Myrcella travels to Winterfell. She rides in the wheelhouse with Cersei, and she finds herself smitten with Robb Stark. And that may be, Brett, why Jon thinks there's not much to her, because her focus was on Robb Stark.
Yeah.
Now she and Tommen, when they're in King's Landing, they encounter a dirty Arya Stark who's been chasing cats throughout the castle. They don't recognize her, which I think is if you remember back to that moment, it's a pretty a funny little moment. And of course, we know that after her father, King Robert, who really isn't her father, is gored during the boar hunt, Renly suggests to Ned Stark that he seize Tommen and Myrcella and take power in order to make sure that Cersei and Tywin don't succeed in their plots. I had forgotten this, but Myrcella is actually in the throne room when Ned presents Robert's will and is betrayed by Littlefinger and
Wow.
the yeah,
I did
had
not.
completely forgotten. That had to be something to witness.
Yes.
Poor
That's-
Myrcella had to
that's-
see all of that.
That's so interesting, though, that she was. Yeah, I did not even know that. That completely over my head.
Yep.
Yep.
And you know, she's obviously there because her father has just died, and her brother is accepting fealty as the new king. But I just found that really interesting that she was there. So when we start A Clash of Kings, Myrcella is attending the tourney on King Joffrey's name day. That's when Tyrion shows up and takes control as acting hand of the king. Of course, we know that Stannis's letter goes throughout the kingdom, naming her and Tommen and Joffrey abominations born of incest. Because the capital was under such threat from both Stannis and Renly, Tyrion concocts a scheme to marry Myrcella to Trystane Martell in order to gain Dorne's support. Dran Martell, the Prince of Dorne, accepts Tyrion's offer, and Myrcella is shipped aboard the Sea Swift. She's accompanied by her sworn shield, Sir Eris Oakheart, who's of the King's Guard and later becomes a point of view in A Feast for Crows. And she's also accompanied by her handmaiden, that same cousin, Rosamund Lannister of Lannisport. The Sea Swift is escorted by 4 ships of the royal fleet, and they sail first for Bravos, then to Dorne in order to evade any capture by Stannis' sellswords in the Narrow Sea. Now, she doesn't appear in A Storm of Swords, but we learn in that book that she arrived safely in Sunspear and has befriended Princess Arianne Martell and Prince Trystane Martell. After the Purple Wedding, Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dorne, reminds Tyrion that under Dornish law, Myrcella, not her younger brother Tommen, should succeed Joffrey to the Iron Throne. That's going to be a very important point when we get into A Feast for Crows, where we find out that Myrcella has been making her chamber in Sunspear in the Old Palace's Tower of the Sun. She takes to Dornish spicy foods. She learns to play Savas, as Brett alluded to. It's a game that her cousin Rosamund finds really difficult to understand. I think Rosamund is not that bright. Following the death of Oberyn Martell, the Sand Snakes and Princess Arianne demand that Myrcella be crowned Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, citing Dornish law. And they use that as a plot to force Dorne into a war with the Lannisters and the Lannister allies. Princess Arianne sets out across the desert with companions and Myrcella Baratheon. They leave Rosamund in Sunspear, curling her hair so she looks even more like Myrcella, and putting red spots, which we would know as chickenpox, on her cheeks in order to keep her secluded and Trystane away from her. However, as Arianne reaches her destination on the Greenblood River, Duran's guardsmen are waiting. Someone betrayed Arianne's secret scheme. Sir Aerys Oakheart is killed fighting Ariohota, Duran's personal guard, and in the chaos, Sir Gerald Dane, aka Darkstar, tries to kill Myrcella to incite war. We find out that Myrcella's horse veers away, preventing the princess from being killed, but she is still mortally wounded, losing an ear and bearing a hideous facial scar. She is saved by Maester Calliote, I think is the name. He is the maester in Sunspear to House Martell. One of the sweeter moments in A Feast for Crows is that Tommen names one of his new Dromons of his new royal fleet for Myrcella. Of course, that fleet is, laugh out loud, later stolen by Orain Waters, my sweet prince. In a Dance with Dragons, Sir Balon Swan arrives in Dorne with the head of Gregor Clegane, and he's also come on a secret mission from Cersei to bring Myrcella back under guise of visiting Tommen in King's Landing. Now, Doran Martell is aware of this plan from his spies in King's Landing. He knows that mercenaries who were hired by Cersei, mercenaries are going to attack them on the road to King's Landing, calling out half man, which would, make it seem like Tyrion was the one that attacked and killed the Dornish Cersei and her plots. God bless her. Now, Doran orchestrates a meeting between Sir Balon and Princess Myrcella at the Water Gardens, where Myrcella tells the knight that it was Darkstar who killed Sir Aerys Oakheart, and that she wants him to find Darkstar. Now, this is done because Doran knows that Sir Balon would not reject an order from Myrcella. Obara Sand, one of Oberyn's Sand Snake daughters, is tasked with taking Sir Balon to High Hermitage to hunt Darkstar, while Lady Nym will take the Martell seat on the small council and accompany Myrcella back to King's Landing. And we find out in the Kevin epilogue that the Lannisters are preparing for Myrcella's return. So we know that Myrcella is coming back to King's Landing. We know that there's a lot of chaos happening in King's Landing. In the Kevin epilogue, we find out that both Pycelle and Kevin Lannister are dead or dying because of Varys' hand. The Golden Company has landed in the Stormlands. There's a lot of chaos going on, and Myrcella is sailing back to her mother. Now, it appears that Cersei is going to regain power in King's Landing, so it's likely that she'll be, back under the protection of her mother and the Lannister soldiers there. But there's a lot that's getting ready to happen in the Winds of Winter to the Lannisters, to the Golden Company, to Fagon's part in the story. So we're going to talk a little bit about why Myrcella is probably a good candidate for what the Dornish wanted at that time. And we'll talk a little bit about her, her dispensation her disposition, which, really, I think makes her a good candidate, but also potentially could make her a good queen. So I think I want to kick it off there and just ask you all, you know, she learns Savas pretty easily. Well, I mean, we don't know that she learns it easily, but she masters it. She actually is able to outwit Tristane at it. And, it's a game that the book says that she's grown to love. And what I think is interesting about that is Myrcella as princess, Myrcella as a woman in a world like Westeros, she's really a pawn. You could see a scenario where she's a very Cersei-like teenager, where she's sold off basically to marry a king or a very high lord or whatever. That's the way women were treated in these type of time periods. But we want to spend some time today thinking about what it would be like if Dorne was successful in their Queenmaker plot, or if for some reason some other factions actually put Myrcella on the throne. What kind of queen would she be? We know she's compassionate. We know she's clever. We know she's brave and wise for her age. And I think that's really interesting that she's framed that way, as like we were talking earlier, guys, before we started recording, that not before we recorded, at the beginning of this recording, that she's so different than both her brothers, but also just many of the other Lannisters around her.
Well, I think she's different, but in a way she's got all Tyrion's like cleverness to her. And I could see her being very jokey too, like, because she's good at the little quips. But she's also very polite. She honestly reminds me of good Queen Alysanne, and I feel like if she was a queen of Westeros, it might look something like that. But at the same point in time, like, she's clever. So in a time of war, she might be able to, run a successful like war campaign too. And yeah, I don't know, but that's just how I see her. I feel like her rule would look a lot like that. Like, of course, good Queen Alysanne didn't rule wholly, but I feel like her policies and stuff like that, it would look a lot the same.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And now thinking back to Fire and Blood and reading about a young Alysanne, who was obviously instrumental in Jaehaerys's rule, but also was a very courageous, intelligent young woman in her own right before she even married Jaehaerys. So yeah, I could kind of see that too. Yeah, Micah.
I think that she's got a lot of like, as a young queen, she's got a lot of like similarities in like her style of ruling, as I could see in like Sansa, or like how Show Marjorie was like a ruler for the people and whatnot, and grew them to her side. I feel like Myrcella would be a lot like that. But another angle I think we could view Myrcella as is, if Cersei was not a twin and didn't have a Jaime, I feel like she would turn out to have been a lot more like Myrcella. Because Myrcella didn't have someone like that to look at in that way.
That is
so
very interesting.
Yeah, I like that. So you're saying that Cersei had Jaime to look on not only as her companion, her friend, her lover, but also the person that she could put all of her jealousies on. That I'm not a man. Dad doesn't
Yeah.
love me because I don't, have a cock
Yeah,
between
Cersei
my
sees
legs. All these things. Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like
yeah.
that.
Cersei sees Jamie as a piece that makes her whole in her own weird way. But Myrcella didn't have that. She had an older brother in Joffrey, and I don't think you would want to call that a brother.
When you see the
So
inverse, when you see like an inverse of like how, Myrcella really cares for Tommen,
yeah,
and they grew up with a mother, whereas like Cersei, when Tyrion was
yeah,
born, their mother died, and she passed all that blame off onto Tyrion,
yeah,
and you don't get that with the Baratheon, uh, or whatever.
Well,
yeah,
and that's an interesting point that, as you were saying earlier, Brett, that she has all of Tyrion's cleverness, minus his deformity, minus the hang-ups that affect his life through Tywin. The
Hmm.
same is true for Cersei. The fact that her mother died, the fact that she felt she couldn't do anything because she was a woman. You don't get that in Myrcella. And one of the things that we definitely don't get in the text, and would be more interesting to understand, is how did Robert treat her? We know how he treated Joffrey, but we don't get any indication of any interaction between Robert and Myrcella, Robert and Tommen, or Robert and both of them. So it's interesting that you point out that she has a mother. Well, she also had a father,
Hmm.
and maybe Cersei just kept her away from that, or she was too young that she didn't see the dynamic at court, or even the physical abuse that Robert inflicted upon Joffrey.
Well,
And so, she just never saw it, and so it never really affected her.
and I don't see Robert treating her the way she did Maya Stone, but it's also never there's nothing there. So maybe he did, but I don't. What from what we know about Cersei is she deliberately tried to keep him away from uh from her children. But I mean, obviously he was around Joffrey enough, like Joffrey was able to see him enough to, pick up on some of the worst parts about Robert. So maybe I don't know. Maybe he did pick up Myrcella and tossed her in the air, or we just don't get any of that. Because
Right.
As much as she does try to keep her kids away from Robert. I mean, there's that story of Joffrey cutting open the cat and Robert smacked him. So he was definitely around for some of it. So maybe there are some positive interactions between Robert and Myrcella and Robert and Tommen. Or I would see I would Tommen would be a little harder for the interaction between them, but I wouldn't think it would be as positive between them. But Myrcella being the only girl, there might have been very positive interactions between them too. So, but we don't have that information. So, we're just speculating. That's just speculation. So,
So let's talk just for a little bit about this Queenmaker plot that happens in A Feast for Crows. I think it's really telling. The Dornish plot occurs because George had to write the reaction to the Red Viper's death. His plan, as we've talked about, as many podcasts have talked about, George's plan after Storm of Swords was to jump 5 years in time into A Dance with Dragons, and have everyone 5 years older, everything 5 years older, and kind of reset the stage for the for the end game. That obviously didn't happen because there's a number of plot points that it just didn't work out. It just didn't work in the writing, and Dorne was one of them. So I think from my perspective that Myrcella is a means to an end for Dorne. I think it's really important to understand that Myrcella took to Dorne. She liked Dorne. She liked the people that she lived with. She became friends with them. They seemed to like her.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But the Queenmaker plot is kind of them exercising their rebellion. Like, okay, this is what's before us. This is what we can do to get back at the Lannisters. So this is what we're going to do. Whereas the Dornish plot is going to take on completely different paths when we get into the Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, through Fagon, the Golden Company, all of these things, Dany perhaps, etc. But I think it's really important to understand that Dorne, Arianne, and the Sand Snakes were so willing to put upon Myrcella this chance to put her on the throne, which, I mean, let's be honest, probably wouldn't happen. I mean, Dorne is a small kingdom. It, can only field maybe 20,000 swords. That would be very difficult to happen. But I think it's just really interesting that George is able to weave this in there, and you get this feeling that, again, I think it's a testament to Myrcella's personality, the fact that people like her and people would be willing to follow her. So I just wanted to make that point that I think it's just an interesting way that George writes this character, that this kingdom that's just reeling and wanting revenge. It feels so comfortable in trying to follow this young girl to get her on the throne.
Yeah.
Anybody want to jump in?
I'll let Brett go because it's Brett's character.
No, I mean, I don't really have much to add to that. I mean, it was very well said. So, but yeah, I don't really have anything to add.
Micah?
I don't have much else to add either. Yeah, a lot of like I can totally see from Doran and probably Arianne that they're more on the using Myrcella as a pawn forward our agenda side, whereas a lot of the more like childlike characters are more liking to Myrcella, and a lot of the people too, most probably. She's a fun person to be around, and she's got some sass.
And I think I think definitely Doran, and I don't think he was ever going to go along with his Queenmaker plot. Like, obviously he did had guards waiting for them at Greenblood, but even Arianne, who's a little older, she's what, 20, 22. I mean, she's not a 15 or 14-year-old,
which is very strange too.
It is,
because she reads like, some of the younger characters.
She reads a little younger. I mean, she's definitely written sultry and all of she's definitely a mature woman, but that makes it even more interesting that she's willing to go along with this. And again, maybe it's just, this is what's available to me right now. This is my way of, and again, it's, if you read the Dornish plot, if you read the chapters in A Feast for Crows, Dorne is a powder keg. It's ready to go off. People want vengeance for the Red Viper's death. And Arianne, she thinks Doran has set on his ass and done nothing for so long, but she's also countering what she thinks he's doing with Quentin, that she thinks he's elevating Quentin above her. So it's Myrcella is a good vehicle because that's the vehicle that's there for them, and two, Myrcella could be a good queen, and so I think that there's a little bit of flavor to that. Dorne's just not going to support anyone, and then backing a Lannister to boot is another interesting turn of events. But if it wasn't Myrcella Baratheon Lannister, I don't think they would be moving this fast and this furious on trying to get her on the throne. I think it has a lot to do with her character, not her being a character in the story, but her character, her personality, her courage, her honesty, all of these things. So I just think that's kind of interesting.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Definitely.
Just a couple interesting quotes that I wanted to share that before we talk a little bit about some speculation surrounding this character. So this comes from the Soiled Knight chapter in A Feast for Crows, which of course is Sir Aerys Oakheart. And this is how he describes the princess. The truth was the princess was braver than her brother, and brighter and more confident as well. Her wits were quicker, her courtesies more polished. Nothing daunted her, not even Joffrey. So right there, again, you get that people just like Myrcella. People are drawn to her. They see the potential in her.
Well, I like the, nothing daunted her, not even Joffrey, which is that's just a really awesome quote.
Yes.
And so very accurate.
Yep. Then there's the fact that she looks like a queen, right? Here is what Tyene Sand says to Doran Martell in the chapter, The Captain of Guards in A Feast for Crows. She is so pretty, don't you think? I wish I had curls like hers. She was made to be a queen, just like her mother. Even though they detest the Lannisters and, they detest Cersei especially, Cersei looks like a queen. Myrcella looks like a queen. So even the Dornish are saying this girl looks like a queen. I think we can't, especially in a world like this, we can't overlook the physical traits that really move people to back her.
I mean, we get the whole first Blackfire Rebellion was based off just that. So,
yep.
I mean, other stuff were at play, but I mean, one of the biggest arguments was, was it Daron? Was he? I don't know if he was the first. I can't remember, but he didn't look. He looked too Dornish, and
yes.
And as Daemon Blackfire looked like a king.
Yep. That's exactly right. So I want to read this last quote before we move into a little bit of speculation and a little bit of prophecy here. But this comes from Ariane's chapter. I think it's The Princess in the Tower from A Feast for Crows. So she says, Sir Aerys was still dead, and Myrcella, I never wanted that. Never. I meant no harm. I meant the girl no harm. All I wanted was for her to be queen. If we had not been betrayed. And I think it's really striking there. I meant the girl no harm. All I wanted was for her to be a queen. I mean, we see this throughout the books. To crown someone is to kill them, right? Yeah, it's just not a good thing. There are so many people vying for power that it doesn't matter who's in their way. They're going to try and harm them, and especially a little girl, and especially someone like Darkstar. I mean, Darkstar is just okay.
And she's a Lannister.
To crown her is to kill her. To crown him is to kill him. All these things that we get. That really works into the Valonqar prophecy. And, I think the three of us here agree that Myrcella is not going to make it. Now, whether that's in the Winds of Winter or A Dream of Spring, who knows?
Well, hold on.
Okay.
I did find a theory. That, and it's not. There's not a lot to it. It's just more speculation. But I thought it was interesting. And it's by this. Let's see. It's on Reddit, and it's by this person named, the letter U / dropkick dog. And basically this user suggests that, Joffrey died. I mean, but the way Tommen and Myrcella may die is not, it could be a more metaphorical death, as they're exposed as, Lannister bastards and not the true heir. And we've seen a lot of a lot of the symbolic deaths. So there's not much to it. I want to believe this. I think I'm more on the side of they're probably going to actually die, but I just thought it was interesting. It was the only theory that I saw with like a positive outcome, and it works in a way, but I don't know. I kind of just don't see him making it though, but I just thought it was an interesting theory. And it's more speculation than anything.
Yeah. I mean, look, anything's possible.
Yeah.
I think the Valonqar prophecy, though, makes it seem like Cersei's children are going to die. Gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds. And when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands around your pale right throat and choke the life from you. So that almost seems like, Cersei's there to watch her children die, and her grief, just utterly devastates her. And we see that to an extent in the show. Go ahead.
Well, I was just a little pushback on that. Cersei, she sees her children as extensions of herself. So if she loses all, if they're like, it's agreed upon, because they've, Eddard sent the letter out, and Stannis is already claiming that they're bastards, and it's not hard to see that they are. But she loses her, her power. She loses all of that power, and then her grief could take her, without them even dying. Because she doesn't really truly care about them. Well, she does and doesn't. It's very vain, but yeah, I mean, I could see her going without her children, Tommen and Myrcella, having to die. But I don't know, just a I don't know, sort of a positive silver lining, maybe, hopefully.
Well,
but
yeah. So go ahead, Micah. You jump in here, and then I've talked a lot.
So much death. What can men do against such reckless hate? I'm stuck in this boat of Myrcella and Tommen are doomed, and I am sad about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone is. So I just wanted to give.
Yeah.
I found that I accidentally found that theory today because I was just trying to brush up on it before, because I prepared for this episode a few weeks ago, and I wanted to. And I accidentally stumbled onto it, but.
There's a definite line of thinking in the fandom that Cersei somehow escapes or gets to walk away from King's Landing and return to Casterly Rock or whatever. So, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Myrcella comes back to her and accompanies her to Casterly Rock, and doesn't go up in the flames of King's Landing, or isn't poisoned on a boat headed for King's Landing or whatever. It's just, I still think at some point, whether it's King's Landing or Casterly Rock or whatever, that prophecy has to come true.
Yeah.
That her kids are going to die. And, it's not necessarily that the prophecy is the thing that forced it to happen. It's Cersei's actions somehow lead to all of these actions. So, go ahead.
Oh well, I was just gonna say like I mean, her actions have already kind of led to her loss of power because
Well, yeah,
she refused Robert and instead had children with Jamie. So yes, if you think about it in like her sense of wanting power, she's about to lose it all if they're decided not to be rightful heirs, and so I think that's when she'll be at her lowest. But at the same point in time, too, if we look at the show, if Jamie dies, and then Varys, Varys might be hoarding heirs, but that might backfire on him, and like Myrcella is shown to have like all the like great qualities of a good leader. And Cersei's probably gonna die, and after she loses all her power. But there's Myrcella. If she's not dead, Myrcella would be a very competent ruler of Casterly Rock, and she fits. I don't know. She's very much like Daenerys and like Jon and some of the other very competent leaders. So I don't know. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe she might live. She might. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm done. Because I know there's so much foreshadowing that she's gonna die. But
yeah. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah.
So she dies from poison on the show. How do you think, Micah, she dies in the books?
I think there's a couple of different ways. I don't think she's going to die on the way to King's Landing. I think her handmaid Rosamund Lannister could die on the road to King's Landing, and they might think that's her. And then Myrcella could show up again without her ear because she lost her ear. I could see Tommen being taken out first before Myrcella, possibly by Tyene, who I once saw a theory on Reddit. I don't know what it's called anymore. I've forgotten. That there was a septa in one of the Cersei dance chapters that might be Tyene. She might already be in King's Landing by now, and she's in a perfect spot to take Tommen, and then when Myrcella comes up, they can easily put Myrcella on the throne for a bit until Aegon comes and dethrones Myrcella somehow. And we could see
Go ahead.
We could see a possible switch from the show to where Tommen's the one that goes out by poison, and then when everything that Cersei's planned for falls to shreds, Myrcella gives up and takes a dive out a window. Because George likes to stab us in the heart. And I can't believe I thought of
It's taking you to dark places, huh?
So what? So I like the idea that Myrcella would be crowned and then would have to be taken down. That's kind of poetic in the way that Dorne backed her to an extent, and then now they're backing Aegon, and okay, we'll kill her and get her out of the way. That's some fucked up shit, which I could see George doing.
Well, the thing though too is symbolically she's might have already been crowned by Arianne, so that fits the description. Gold will be their crowns, gold will be their shrouds.
Yep.
It doesn't give
definitely.
It doesn't give a time period of when they die. I mean, everyone dies,
Right. Yep.
But like the death of Myrcella Baratheon and the rebirth of her as a bastard, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know though.
I think it's interesting. I definitely think it's interesting. Again, it would be totally screwed up for the Sand Snakes to kill her. That's not saying it's wrong because, again, this is a Song of Ice and Fire, and
Yeah.
anything's possible. But with Arianne supporting Fagon, that's some really dark territory of her cousins killing the person that she helped. And that's kind of again, that goes back to crown her as to kill her. I mean, that would be Arianne elevating her and pushing her into these type of plots and then getting her killed. I kind of like that in a way.
It could add some guilt on Arianne for when Arianne becomes queen.
I think that right there is why it makes a lot of sense that it's depth for her character.
Now,
and Arianne's a great complex character already, but knowing, I mean, she, we read in that quote earlier, she regretted the harm that came to Myrcella. It's not what she meant to do. She just, meant for her to be queen. And she got her attacked and almost killed. Well, okay. You might actually get her killed now. Micah, you said something interesting about the potential for Rosamund Lannister to be poisoned on the way. What's your line of thinking there? Because I'm just trying to figure out what.
Did I say poisoned? I didn't mean to say poisoned. If I did,
well, dead. Her die. I think you did say poisoned, but
it's like the Stannis treatment.
For her dying on the way to King's Landing, and them thinking it might be Myrcella. What do you? Why do you think that? Like, what's the?
That comes along the lines of because I believe that the mercenaries that Cersei got, I'm along the lines of, I think that's Shagga of the Vale Mountain Clansmen who's still in the Kingswood, running around being Shagga. Because he would totally run around shouting, half man, half man.
Yeah.
I think that is going to pay off sometime in the first third of Winds. We could hear of some casualties, and I think that we're going to think that Myrcella's dead there. And George could be using Rosamund as a possible red herring. It could be like, oh no, it was just one of the handmaids, some other Lannister girl. Myrcella's still alive, and she's going to stay that way.
Well, I could see that. Because the theory that Myrcella's already dead, I kind of don't agree with, because you see that it's already established that Myrcella's clever, and she takes to Syvas very quickly in A Feast for Crows. But it's established she's clever in A Clash of Kings. So I don't think she's already done, but I could see I still could see her dying off page and it be her cousin. But I like the idea that it's flipped to where her cousin is killed thinking it's her, and I don't like that idea. I guess it's kind of awful, but you get my meaning.
Myrcella is sailing to King's Landing, so unless Rosamund is sent up the King's Road, I think
thought she was sent up the King's Road, wasn't she?
Well, that was what they that's what Balon Swan wanted Duran to do. But Duran, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I should have read the Watcher chapter. I've just been so tired of in actually doing research.
Yeah, you're fine.
I can see it on your face.
Again, you could still,
It's that obvious.
Duran could put Rosamund in harm's way just to just to create even more chaos for the Lannisters by getting something like that to happen. So yeah, I mean, I think there's still potential for that. But yeah, they're sailing to King's Landing. And obviously I don't think Duran would want Lady Nym put in harm's way. Because she's going to take the Dornish throne on the small council, and she's escorting Myrcella. So, but I do think that there's potential for something to happen with Rosamund, and it either people think it's Myrcella or whatever, because like Brett alluded to, there is an interesting theory. It's very tinfoil, but there is a theory that Myrcella is dead already, and that Duran and his maester have put Rosamund Lannister in her place. You know, let's think back to the fact that Rosamund and Myrcella look so much alike. Rosamund has straight hair, and they curl her hair to leave her behind in order to throw off Trystane and Duran, so you know they won't suspect that Myrcella is missing. And the theory goes that basically Duran was lying, that Myrcella didn't survive the attack by Darkstar, that she died off screen basically, and he put Rosamund in her place. Now, you know, there's a few holes with that, because Balon Swan goes and speaks to Myrcella at the Water Gardens to confirm the story. And I mean, you could argue, okay, what interaction has Balon really had with Myrcella? And it's been a couple of years since she sailed away from King's Landing, so there's that potential there. Rosamund could join the lie, right? I mean, she could, you know, she's not a princess. She's just a highborn lady of Lannisport. So there's the potential that Rosamund, if she pretends to be Myrcella, she gets a throne or something out of this. So you could see it being advantageous for her to do this. But the really awful thing about this theory is that if Myrcella really died, then Rosamund has to be injured as well. So did they cut off Rosamund's ear and put a gash on her face to make this work? That's pretty fucked up. I'm not gonna say Dorne is not capable of that, but that's a lot.
Yeah, I thought the idea was more that Rosamund was in. They actually took Rosamund on the thing, and then Darkstar killed Rosamund, and so like they killed the body double. That's not as big of a blow to, that's what they killed. They actually killed Myrcella, but basically saying, well, you get what I'm saying. They thought they killed Myrcella, but Myrcella is actually alive. But it could be a switch and bait type situation.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Arianne pretty much confirms that it's Myrcella that was with her.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, me too.
But it's interesting. I mean, I kind of think that, you know, is this just the fact that she looks like Myrcella, the fact that they play this, you know, it says that throughout the story, it says that Rosamund and Myrcella play this game in King's Landing. So like Rosamund will go to things that they think it's Myrcella, and they play this game of like tricking people. So I just wonder if this is just one of those nuggets that George adds there just to get you like,
I think so.
But it's not really true. Like, it's just one of those things where he's like, no, I'm just adding flavor to the story. You know, don't go down that path.
Well, I think the biggest thing too is there's some things we know about Myrcella. She likes the Dornish spicy food, and she's good at Syvass, whereas her cousin does not like Syvass. So you have those two different things. Now, we don't know if her cousin doesn't like Dornish spicy foods, but we know Myrcella particularly really likes it. So I think those are two things to pay attention to. when it comes to the upcoming
Oh
book.
yeah, absolutely. If in the Winds of Winter, Myrcella sucks at Cyvax,
Yeah,
or she's like, I'm not eating that food. Get that away from me. I hate spicy food. Then you're like, wait a minute.
that's
This
definitely
is
not going to be.
Myrcella.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because you don't put those details in there just to throw them in there. You know, there's a reason. I mean, maybe he does sometimes to build the world, but
He definitely does. But that's just one
it
of those
comes up
interesting things. Yeah.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Closing thoughts. Closing thoughts on Myrcella Baratheon. Anything, Micah?
No, I don't have much to add. I think we covered it all pretty much.
All right.
There.
I very much disagree with John and his him deciding that Myrcella is insipid. She is not. She is very clever. She's an awesome character, and I'm just interested to see what where her arc's going, and I hope it's more in a positive light. I hope she lives. But yep, that's all I have.
All right. Well, I think that wraps us up on our discussion on Myrcella Baratheon. So please rate and review us on iTunes and other podcasting platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Planetos Podcast, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, we'll see you around Planetos.
See ya.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.